Well, tonight the three independents emerged from a meeting with Treasury head Ken Henry, and they've released documents relating to the election costings of both Labor and the Coalition. Tony Windsor joins me on the line from Canberra. Tony Windsor, we've been told that you have found some funding shortfalls, or Treasury have. Can you tell us about that?
Well, essentially, Tony, what we asked Treasury to do last week was to cost the election promises of both sides of the Parliament, the Labor Party and the Coalition. They've costed the Labor Party's promises, and they're about on line with what they said they would be. There's some argument in relation to the Coalition policies and the costings that Treasury have done, and the what I call a black hole anyway is probably somewhere between $7 and $11 billion in terms of the difference between what the Coalition said their costings were and what the Treasury would suggest in terms of an incoming government as to their bottom line.
OK, let's get this straight. A deficit in Coalition costings, as you understand it, of between $7 and $11 billion. I mean, there's a $4 billion difference in those two figures, just to start with. I mean, couldn't Treasury give you an exact figure?
Well, what they're suggesting, and there's a bit of a benefit of the doubt in relation to this, and I'm sure the Coalition will come back to Treasury and try and clear up some of the issues that are there. But what Treasury are saying is that the Coalition went to the election with something like $3.3 billion of new money in terms of commitments to projects. What they are essentially saying now is that they had intended to scrap the equivalent amount, as I understand it anyway, of $3.3 billion in relation to projects. So they went into the campaign with a view to scrapping certain things but didn't tell anybody what they were. And according to Treasury today, they weren't prepared to tell Treasury what those particular projects were that they'd intended to scrap. So Treasury have done two sets of numbers, I guess, one based on the assumption that those projects were to be scrapped, and one based on the number that they've come up with themselves.
But both of them contain a significant black hole, to use your words, if Treasury is correct. If those figures are right, if the Coalition cannot explain them to you sufficiently, how big an influence will that make on your decision?
Well, I think it's part of the mix in terms of what we're trying to come to here, and essentially what we're after, all I'm after, is a judgment on two different themes that want to be the government for the next period of 3 years. So one of those things that we have to establish is a trust in what they're actually saying, and undoubtedly Joe Hockey and others will get back onto Treasury tomorrow and try and correct the inferences or the assumptions or the errors or whatever happens to be in Treasury's numbers. But there's been a series of meetings, and actually we were supposed to meet with Treasury at 2 o'clock today, and it was pushed back, I think, till after 4:30. So there's been a series of interactions between the Coalition and Treasury officials today on these numbers themselves. So,
does any of this make you suspicious as to Tony Abbott's reasons for not wanting originally to put his costings into Treasury?
Well, I think that's the obvious thing to ask, is that we probably understand now why he wasn't interested in releasing the numbers, and then I think Andrew Robb came up with some various reasons as to legal reasons, the leak and the breach of caretaker provisions, etc., etc. So I think it does, and I think we all await an explanation tomorrow of where these significant differences are in terms of interpretation. But I think the basic point here is, Tony, that what we suggested last week was we get the independent umpire, the body that would actually assess the election promises and put in place the bottom line in terms of the new government coming in. And I know these circumstances are quite odd with a caretaker arrangement, but what we've got is two applicants for the job, and Treasury has assessed both those applicants in terms of their promises at last Saturday's election and what they would actually cost, what they would be putting to the incoming government as their starting price.
A quick final question, and we've only got a brief time for an answer as well. The Labor-Green alliance, does that have any bearing on your decision? Does it make you feel that a government will be more stable with an alliance?
No, it doesn't. I'll be basing my decision on a whole range of things, and what other individual members of Parliament do is their business, not mine.
OK, Tony Windsor, we'll have to leave you there. We thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us on Lateline.
Thanks, Tony.